Welcome to episode 35 of the LoraineCounty.com Business Insights Podcast. I'm your host, Ed Skimmon, and today we're talking with Giovanna Scaletta-Bremke, candidate for judge of the Lorain County Court of Common Pleas. Join us as Giovanna shares her motivations for running, her experience as an attorney and magistrate, and her commitment to specialized dockets and community involvement. She also discusses her approach to case management, the role of technology in the courtroom, and her dedication to staying updated on legal trends. This episode is part of the 2024 Candidate Spotlight Series, aimed at providing an additional way to learn about local leaders running for office. Before we get started, I wanted to share a quick disclaimer. Both of the companies I co-founded, Emerge Inc. and LoraineCounty.com, have professional relationships with some of the candidates, and I also count a few of them as personal friends. To ensure fairness, we invited all local candidates to participate and record an episode completely free of charge. Each candidate running for the same office was asked the exact same questions, and aside from removing any unnecessary sounds and long pauses, we kept the editing to a minimum. For a full list of local candidates and issues, visit LoraineCounty.com/election. And on election night, visit LoraineCounty.com for real-time election results. Here is my conversation with Giovanna Scaletta-Bremke.
Giovanna Scaletta-Bremke. I'm running for judge of the Lorain County Court of Common Pleas.
Welcome, Giovanna. Thank you for joining us and sharing your insights. To start with, what motivated you to run for judge of the Lorain County Court of Common Pleas?
I've been an attorney. It'll be 11 years in October, and I practice in every court in Lorain County. And I'm also fairly involved in the community. With the retirement of two of the judges, the spot that I'm running for is due to age limitations. Judges have age limitations, and the judge cannot run again. I thought it was a good opportunity to further my efforts in the community. Both of those judges that are retiring are also presiding over specialized dockets, which is something that I have an interest in. So those were my motivating factors.
If elected, what are some of the key principles or values that will guide your approach to handling cases on the Common Pleas Court?
I'll talk a little bit about the specialized dockets because it's a little bit different, but generally, and I guess for the audience, because not everyone knows what the different judge divisions do. So I'm running for the general division, which is about high dollar civil cases, disputes involving large amounts of money, and also generally felony criminal cases. The judges, again, that are retiring also do specialized dockets, and those are treatment courts. They're after people who are convicted of crimes. If they have mental health or drug addiction issues, they can get in these specialized dockets. And what they do is it's a high intensity probation. So normally our probation department meets with people maybe once a month, every other week, if they're really intense. But the probation, the specialized dockets, for example, in the drug court, which is I'm the attorney of the drug court. I'm also acted as a magistrate over the Leary Municipal Drug Court. They get drug tested 3-4 times a week. They go to court every other week, and they see their probation officer once a week. So it's much more intense. They have a better success rate. So that's something that I have an interest in, and just generally outside of the specialized dockets, following the law and being fair.
Courts have increasingly relied on technology for remote hearings and case management. What role do you see technology and innovative practices playing in the Common Pleas Court?
Technology certainly has a place. I come from a background where I've actually been a practicing attorney, again, in every court in Lorain County, but I've also been a magistrate. So I'm the only one in my race that has that experience being a judicial officer already. So I have incorporated Zoom into some of my hearings. For example, people who are out of town in the civil context, I think either phone or Zoom hearings are appropriate for those early hearings where a lot of times you're setting deadlines, getting to know the issues. And my background as a practicing attorney, sometimes I would drive out to Cleveland, find a parking space, which everyone knows that's not easy, all for a 2-minute hearing. And ultimately, that gets passed along to the client. So it does make sense for courts to utilize technology in that way, more so probably in the civil context, although we do incorporate in the criminal context a little bit still, but also technology, it could even be incorporated more in our courts. If you look at our website for the Common Pleas Court, it's very outdated. It's not very user friendly. I think that's something, there are 6 judges, so I'd be one of 6 voices, but that's something that we can do to update the website, update our technology in the courtrooms. Obviously, that all costs money, but the Supreme Court does provide for grants In other counties, they actually do have, for example, in Lake County, which isn't far from us, they have a live stream of their courtroom all the time, which if you look at city council meetings and our commissioners meetings, those are all on YouTube, bringing the technology into the courtroom a little bit more. Now, there are downsides. There are some things that are confidential and maybe witnesses who may be a little bit more reluctant if they're on YouTube, but there are some advantages as well. So that's something that I would look into is providing access to the greater public.
As legal trends evolve, how do you plan to stay updated on the developments in the law that could affect your work as a judge?
My practice as an attorney has been a lot of appellate work, and the way the court systems work are there's three tiers. The trial court, which is what I'm running for, if you're dissatisfied with your decision there, you can appeal it to the Court of Appeals. Our Court of Appeals here that is the Ninth District Court of Appeals. It covers Lorain, Summit, Medina, and Wayne County. So it's a big area. There's 5 judges that sit on that court. And again, if you're dissatisfied with their decision, you can take it even a step further, go to the Ohio Supreme Court. But a lot of my practice has been that appellate practice. And I've even also argued to the Supreme Court 3 times in 3 years, which they don't have to take every case. So it is somewhat unique that I've had that experience. But the reason I mentioned that is because it's really the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court that sort of makes that law, right? Because they're deciding, hey, did the trial court make a mistake or not? So I think that my background actually is very helpful in that regard because a lot of my cases have actually made the law that I would follow. And staying up to date on those Court of Appeals and Supreme Court decisions, I think is a big part of the job, is a big part of my interest because that's a lot of my background. So I think staying up to date on the law in that regard, as far as legal trends, a lot of the legal trends are going to those more specialized dockets. There's a lot of funding for those dockets that are outside of the local dollars. So when we're talking about those specialized dockets, we largely run on state and federal dollars. So that's money that wouldn't otherwise be coming to our county that's coming to our county. And I think that's important that we utilize those programs. And those programs are very much at risk if the judge who's elected does not take those programs. And that, again, is where the system is going because ultimately we can put people in probation or even prison. And sometimes that's appropriate for both of those things. But what the specialized dockets really do is they get people employed back in their community, involved with their families. And those are actually requirements for graduation and reduces this cycle so that hopefully the community sees a safer community and spends less resources in the long run.
Let's switch over and talk a little bit about you. What's your background?
I grew up in Avon. My dad was a home builder. My mom was a teacher in Avon and lived in Avon essentially my whole childhood. It's changed a lot since then. My dad actually developed Avonbury Lakes right by Avon Commons, Devonshire Meadows across the street, and a few developments in North Ridgeville as well. And I worked for him at a very young age, sweeping out garages, watering plants in the model homes. And I think if you ask me, a lot of my early days was watching my parents be very hard workers, and that instilled good work ethic in me. Again, my mom is a teacher and my dad as a home builder. And then I went on to college at University of Cincinnati. I had a desire to stay in my dad's family business, actually. So my focus was my bachelor in business, but my focus in finance, mergers, acquisitions. And I wanted to, again, go work for my father. But at that time, it was '07, '08, and everyone knows it was a kind of recession then. Housing market was terrible. And simultaneously, my father was diagnosed with cancer. So he essentially said to me, I don't know what it looks like here for the future, but we could always use an attorney in the family. So that's when I started to be interested in law school. And after I graduated from my undergrad, I went to law school. I graduated from Cleveland, was Cleveland Marshall at the time. Now it's Cleveland State College of Law, and got a job even in law school at an attorney's office by the name of John Duffy. He's actually Avon Lake resident, but he also had another attorney who worked for him he did real estate law, primarily civil litigation. And he had another attorney who bought the practice when I was working there, who did more criminal law and appeals. So that was my background very early on into my legal exposure. And I worked for them for about a year after law school and then started my own business. So I've had my own business for a majority of my practice. And I have an office in Avon right behind Nemo Grill. And I've practiced a lot of what I did on those early years. So civil, criminal, probate, a little bit of everything. I even did domestic relations early on in my practice, although I don't do it now. I've had experience in all of those various areas. And just recently in 2022, I also became a part time magistrate in the Elyria Municipal Court. People may be familiar with the Elyria traffic enforcement. They've picked up a lot of their traffic enforcement. So that created a need for another magistrate over there. And I picked up that caseload. As part of my duties there, I've presided over criminal, civil, and traffic cases all through trial and everything.
In your professional career, what are you most proud of accomplishing?
I've had the experience of practicing before the Supreme Court. So you would think that would be maybe my proudest accomplishment. But I can tell you probably what makes me happiest are there's some really, and they're rare, but some really good feel good moments. I've had the opportunity of helping some individuals who were just in a really bad spot. And I think it's those moments where we can use our talents and our law degree for the better. Probably the happiest case that I had was I had an individual who had no family, had family, but that had basically deserted her at a very young age. She was special needs and in foster care for much of her adolescence. When she became an adult, she needed a guardian, and she met a woman at her group home who worked there, and that woman became her guardian. And that woman stopped working there, but still remained her guardian. And eventually, and that woman had no children of her own. Eventually, that woman adopted her as an adult. And that adoption hearing was probably the most touching part of my career because that young lady had never had a family. And to see those two and their bond, and they go on vacations and travel the world together, and the mother-daughter bond that they had, even though they weren't biological family, was one of the most special bonds that I've ever seen. So that hearing stands out to me as probably one of my most proud moments.
Outside of work, what are your hobbies and interests, and how do they help to recharge you?
I have kids. So a lot of my hobbies are things that my kids enjoy. So I have an 8, 6, and 2-year-old boys. I'm involved. I like to volunteer at their school. My son, my oldest, is big into wrestling and football. And so we spend a lot of our weekends doing those things and going to wrestling tournaments. So I love to spend time with my kids. My number one priority is my family, my children, and my husband and I. Again, we like to both be involved with their school. He's on the Fireland School Board. And so I would say being with my kids is really what keeps me going. And quite frankly, what keeps me going in this race to see my kids and how involved they've been in this campaign and how proud they are. It's been a family event. And so I'll be happy when it's over and I can spend more time with them. But that's what we like to do.
Last question. What else should voters know about you prior to voting in November?
Again, I tell everyone 3 things that set me apart. Number one, I'm the only one with judicial experience. So I'm the only one that's had the experience of having made those decisions, those tough decisions, writing legal decisions and executing those, handling a high volume docket, which a lot of what we're doing is efficiently handling dockets. So you talk to a lot of people and they say, hey, my case is wrapped up in the legal system for a very long time. It's the judge's job to keep those cases moving because these are real life decisions and real life matters that are hanging over people's heads. So I think that that's important. And I'm the only one that has the experience of doing that already. I'm also the only one that has criminal experience. I also have the civil experience, but I have criminal experience. That's also important because about 80% of our trials in the common pleas court are criminal cases. And we also have to have magistrates who handle much of the civil docket. So a lot of the judge's job of what I'd be doing is criminal in nature. And again, I'm the only one that has that experience. And lastly, I'm also the only one who's been recommended by the Bar Association. So the Bar Association is made up of about 500 attorneys, judges, magistrates, and they do a poll. And earlier this year, they did a poll, and I'm the only one that was recommended by our peers for the position. I'm also endorsed by the Lorain County Fire Chiefs Association, the UAW, AFL-CIO, Laborers International, LIUNA, the building trades, and all of their affiliates. So a lot of educators and hardworking people, and I'm really proud of that.
Finally, where can people learn more about your qualifications and connect with you?
BremkeForJudge.com. I also have a Facebook page, facebook.com/BremkeForJudge.
Thank you, Giovanna, for joining us and sharing your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the LoraineCounty.com Business Insights Podcast. We hope you found this conversation informative and that it provided some ideas that will help your business continue to grow. Please follow us on your favorite podcast platform to hear each episode where we shine a spotlight on local resources that will boost your business. And we want to hear from you. Email ed@loraincounty.com to share your feedback and topic ideas.